So, I have here a template for a Cross Duel every monster tier list maker. This is just sort of a template that anyone can use. I've got all of the monsters in the game here. Their names are cut off a little bit, but fuck it, that's fine. You can see which ones are which. And what we're going to talk about today on this stream that is being turned into a video, or it's this stream on Twitch if you want to come watch these things live, is we're going to be talking about all of the monsters and how good they are as an ace monster. I haven't planned this out very well, so you're going to have to be patient with me as I fumble my way through this. But let's start with the tiers. S tier is, I mean, meta, right? Like, it's the meta one. This is the one that you should be running as the head of your deck. A is Rogue. This is the kind of thing where you can run this as a strategy, and it can work pretty well, but you're probably not going to beat a meta deck, but you'll probably beat everything else under this tier. B is Gimmick. These are gimmick setups that rely on very specific circumstances to actually go off. Think your normal Exodia deck from proper Yu-Gi-Oh! And not from Cross Duel, and that's what you've got. C tier here, and actually I think Exodia might go into B as well in this. We'll see. Is bad. Please don't run these. And then D tier is really bad. Unplayable. Don't expect C and D tier to have that much difference between them. Also, as another side comment, you've probably picked up on this already if you've watched my previous video. I say a lot, especially when I'm kind of buying time while working on a video concept and words to say while I'm definitely recording for a video. And it's awful. I hate it. Also, we've got our partner in the background just constantly talking. We're going to go ahead and go into the card catalog to try and mitigate that. Sorry that has been polluting the audio this entire time, future me, you poor bastard. But I am taking measures to try and not say, so much. It'll still slip through. I am a very weak human being. But I'm trying. God bless. Let's go ahead and start from basically the bottom here. See, I did it. I did it already. I did it already. That's fine because I'm transitioning into something. We have a view of the actual game here as well that we'll be tabbing over to every once in a while, specifically to look at the skills that a monster can use. Since we're going from the bottom up, we're going to start here at the very bottom of rares. Zany Zebra. I'm going to go ahead and say this without any kind of consideration or anxiety in my voice. He's in D tier. He is unplayable. Don't play Zany Zebra as your ace monster. Zany Zebra is okay in pendulum decks because he is a pendulum monster, and that can result in some pretty good plays. But overall, he could also go pretty well into a defensive focus deck with defense support being a major player and defense supplement allowing him to sort of sit on the board for a while. But definitely not your ace monster. I'm trying not to. Okay, here's our first bad tier. Milla, the Temporal Magician. Sorry, I just put it in bad tier. See, Milla is currently the subject of a style of deck which tries to OTK in this game. And God bless their sweethearts for trying to do so. See, the idea behind Milla the Temporal Magician is you make Milla your ace monster, because she's a level 4 that can be gotten out super easily. And she is run with 2 wizardry skills, because the main difference between your ace monster and any other monsters in this game is that ace monsters can have 3 skills, whereas in ranked duels, your other monsters can only have 1 skill. This means that ace monsters can be customized and have a certain level of flexibility in what they do when they hit the field. Milla here is currently run with 2 wizardry and used for an OTK strategy. This is bad. What people will do is they will hang out for most of the game, play very defensive, play not that many cards, try not to get rushed down because they're not doing that much, and then towards the end of the game, they'll play Milla, have her walk halfway down the lane, then during the next turn, they slap every single card that they have in their hand, which is generally speaking all spell cards, and then have her walk up and punch the enemy to win the game. Because wizardry gives her a 300 attack and defense boost for each stack of wizardry she has, for each spell that is cast, that generally results in her getting around 5,000 to 6,000 attack and then running up and punching someone. The problem with this strategy is that it is easily stonewalled by a defense position monster or any trap. Most traps in this game can completely shut down Milla, or another spell card can just instantly give you an out to her. If she runs into a trap hole, she's done. There's so many ways to counterplay this strategy. It's so fragile. For the love of God, don't run Milla. Milla actually might belong in meme or gimmick tier. You know what? For C tier, we're gonna go from gimmick to meme. There's a difference between gimmick and meme. Gimmick is something that is inconsistent, but can kind of work if it happens to go well. Whereas meme strats are so inconsistent that they need kind of everything to go right in order to actually work. Are defensive decks a legit strategy? Sort of. The defensive decks can work out fairly well, provided the enemies that you're playing are not running specific strategies. If you're running up against an Exodia player, as we mentioned earlier in the stream, come watch the VOD, ha ha ha. I may put up a VOD channel one of these days. But if you're playing against an Exodia player as a defensive life point game spam deck, you're gonna have a bad time because the Exodia player is gonna win before you get your win condition. Because the way that you get your win condition as a life point spam deck is by turtling up so hard that you get 8,000 life points and then no one can actually beat you. Which, generally speaking, is not a winning strategy when you have someone that wins after 5 turns instead of 8. So, defensive decks, I think, can play fairly well if they're not playing it against an Exodia deck. This also goes in because defense is sort of an easier stat to get as opposed to attack. And it has a little bit more advantage as compared to attack in this game specifically. Namely, you don't move when you're in defense position, and if someone hits you while you're in defense position, they don't go for the life points, which can be very valuable. I'm gonna have a tutorial and like several tips video down on the YouTube one of these days. Gotta know what you're aiming for, I guess. Yeah, you gotta kind of have a strategy in play for most of this game. Anyway, next card is going to be the wonderful and always mysterious Mokimoki. Don't play it as your ace monster. Here, we're gonna go through here real quick and just denote things that you shouldn't play as your ace monster. Bitron shouldn't be your ace. Where's the Kuribos? Kuribo shouldn't be your ace. Wing Kuribo shouldn't be your ace. Probably this dragon shouldn't be your ace. None of the Ojamas should be your ace. Quillbolt shouldn't be your ace. Really, most of the rares just straight up should not be your ace monster. But they're not in the unplayable tier, so we'll... Winged ace, though, please don't run Winged Kuribo as your ace monster. It's awful. Don't do that. I'm trying to see if there's any other obvious dump this into the garbage cards. I don't think there are. Because the rest of these may go somewhere from gimmick to meme. Because generally speaking, until we get to the SRs, as a rule, you're gonna want to run either an SR or a UR as your ace monster, because they tend to be significantly more powerful than the other monsters that are present in the game. Yes, it is fairly hard to get a UR or an SR monster developed to the point that they have all of their skills unlocked and available to use as an ace monster. That doesn't mean you shouldn't still be running a UR or an SR as your ace monster, because that gives you instant access to a very powerful monster to play. I have seen so many people make really stupid decisions with their ace monster. Specifically, the thing that has inspired this conversation and this video idea was earlier during the stream, someone played, of all things, monsters. Z Metal Tank with 1 stack of Cohesion as their ace monster. They set it in defense position during phase 1 of the game. They played 2 other monsters, and then they just spam monsters that all had the attack boosting skills, like, hold on, this guy doesn't have it. Sparkman doesn't have it. Yeah, so imagine this is attack instead of defense support, it's attack support. When you play it, all your other monsters gain 200 attack. The idea was to play Z Metal Tank in defense position, have it gain a bunch of stats off of Cohesion, then play a bunch of monsters that boost stats when they actually get played, and have Z Metal Tank become ace stat-wise without having to sacrifice a card. Wow. Except a lot of the things that make UR and SR monsters good is the fact that they have access to unique skills that our monsters can't use. Specifically, these are master or special skills. And as such, you really kind of want to take advantage of those. UR monsters specifically have master skills that can only be used if they are the ace monster of your deck. And you're going to want to build decks around these UR skills. These master skills, my bad. Anyway, let us continue with... You know what, let's look at Draco the Tiny. Yeah, don't run this as your ace monster. It has reincarnation. It's good to run in a deck, but it's not good to run as your ace. Again, probably decent in a defense-focused deck because it does have defense support or reincarnation. If you feel like flipping it back, if you're running a reincarnation deck, you could probably fit this in pretty well, but not good as an ace. Twin Edge Dragon. So I think most monsters that have super speed go into the meme category because super speed is inherently a very useful ability to have on turn 1. The way that a lot of people, I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to restate it just for the sake of clarity. I say and then clarity, like I didn't just muddle up the clarity of the statement that I'm saying by saying I'm sorry, video editing me, I'm terrible. Super speed is not a very good ability anywhere outside of the first turn of the game. The way that this game works, there's a card in the middle of the center lane, which everyone plays a card down and generally competes over at the start of the match. This card can be one of 4 cards, I'm not going to go over those here, but they're very strong cards that you want because they can completely twist or give you a massive advantage in the game. The problem is that all the monsters move at the same pace, except for super speed monsters. Super speed monsters are able to move faster than every other monster. In fact, they move 1/2 space quicker. Which means, if there are no other super speed monsters in the game at the start of the turn, you are guaranteed to get that middle card, unless people trapped mid, which is frequently what they do. So I don't really recommend sacrificing your ace monster in order to run a super speed ace, because at that point, you're trying for an early game advantage that might not pay off in the long run. I don't think the middle card is so good that you should sacrifice having a powerful ace monster for the middle card. That said, Twin Edge Dragon definitely goes into meme, because you can stack it up with super speed and 2 extra attack and then have it run down lane. Maybe have some other card that gives it another stack of super speed so that you could instantly have a 3,000 attack, and instantly have a 2,000 attack dude running up against someone that didn't think to put a defensive position monster on the field. That could also be very good at killing Exodia. I should know, I play an Exodia deck. We'll go into that later. Just know for now that Twin Edge Dragon, not a good ace. There's probably better options out there, but if you want to run a really stupid meme deck, Twin Edge Dragon, he's on that list. Can't believe you put the 3 goblins in D tier. Absolutely, I put the 3 goblins in D tier. What are you talking about? Spark Magician, or Sparkheart's Girl, not Spark Magician. Although Spark Magician is actually a really funny name, because it's like Dark Magician, but Sparky. Again, not a good ace to run. Really doubling up on any of these skills is not worth it, and having multiple of these different skills is also not worth it. Pretty much you'll just run her in an Inventor deck, or maybe a Burn deck, and even then, like, you probably won't run her because her stats are garbage. And there's better cards to run in Inventor decks as opposed to Sparkheart's Girl, because, again, her stats are doo-doo. Don't run Sparkheart's Girl. She goes in bad tier. Unplayable. No, get Strange Cat. Strange Cat goes in unplayable, not because of anything that the card does, but because the card art is disgusting and I hate it. Why did they draw it like that? Why does Strange Cat look like that? Why does it look like this? Editor, could you, like, flip the video? Thank you. Why does it look like this? Why has it got an ass? Why are its eyes like that? Look at this specific point on the card art. Why is its mouth like that? I hate it. Why does it have one Timmy Turner buck tooth? I hate it. Ah! Anyway, the actual card is pretty useless as it stands. Again, it's the kind of thing that you run in Inventor decks. It has Wizardry in here, which can be good for a Wizardry deck. It could also be good for Healer. Really, you probably just don't run this thing in general because the Healer-style decks really like to run Fairies and... Okay, now that I've actually seen the cat, I understand. Yeah, you understand why no one likes Strange Cat. It's... Anyway, you don't run this as your ace monster. It's bad. On to the next one. Trickstar Lycaaris. Potentially, that's a solid maybe there, gamer. Because the way that Trickstar Lycaaris can work is if you are running a deck based around... Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? The queen. Trickstar Holly Angel. Her special skill makes it so that your snipe deals damage to all opposing players. So if you're running her, she can act as kind of a flex option if you actually have Trickstar Holly Angel in hand, if you somehow draw into her, because you can give her Link Arrow and 2 snipe, which means that she can either be used as a way to deal 400 burn damage to an opponent, or to all of your opponents if you have Holly Angel on the field already, or can be used as a Link Arrow sacrifice in order to get Holly Angel out more consistently. Or, alternatively, you could just run her as either a Link Arrow or a Snipe instead of, you know, convoluting your deck a little bit more. I'd still say, I'll put her in meme, and that's a generous decision. Because, honestly, I think you just don't put her in your ace slot at all. Back to here. Trickstar Lilybell, I think, is the exact same situation. She goes alongside her sister. If you're running her, you run her in the exact same way. I'm not even going to bother showing her getting put into her tier because you know exactly where she's going. Ram Clouder. I'd say he also deserves to be put into meme. Link Arrow, Provoke, and Attack Supplement is a pretty spicy combination of abilities. Specifically, Link Arrow can help you get a monster out onto the field that is incredibly terrifying, that pops off even harder if you have Link Arrow style cards on the field, like Firewall Dragon or Decode Talker. And the combination of Provoke and Attack Supplement is a pretty strong one. Provoke putting any monster that you fight into attack position, and Attack Supplement restoring 400 attack at the end of every turn. You could potentially forego the Link Arrows entirely and just run this with Provoke into Attack Supplement, meaning that it will regain 800 attack at the end of every turn, which can be kind of terrifying because it'll be able to really stick on the board and be a problem for a long time. That said, this is still not worth getting rid of a powerful UR Ace monster to run, so this still goes into meme strategy, but it's at least a funny meme and is a little bit more viable than the other ones. It still doesn't go into Gimmick. I think Gimmick is going to be the range of SRs and some URs, maybe. Draconet, the dragon, the Link's dragon. The dragon from Link's Brains that everyone remembers. Don't run this as your ace monster. It is the only thing that you would get off of this is double focus, which is 400 attack at the start of each of your turns, which is an 1800 attack monster turn 1. Oh no, how terrifying. That's not very good. Apologies that I am leaning in a really weird way. I'm assuming people aren't going to be sweating over the Draconet portion of this video. Don't run Draconet. It's bad. The name is just Genius Cancer. I mean, yeah, it's not great. Draconet goes into unplayable. I don't know if he'll go at like the top of unplayable, but because I think you might be able to actually do something with him, but he's not good. He's not worth the effort. Boop. Go over here. Hello, Bitron. Bitrons and don't run. Don't run Bitron as your ace monster. That said, if you do run Bitron at all and you're not running him with link arrows, I highly suggest attack debuff on him. Because with that 2,000 defense stat line, dropping your opponent's attack by 300 every time is going to help him live for a little longer and completely dump your opponent's stats. If you're playing in tag duels and you do have him unlocked to 2, I highly suggest running him with 2 attack debuffs, because that will allow him to just completely erase anything that your opponent is sending at you. But don't run him in competitive, because that's awful. Run him in competitive in a Link or with 1 attack debuff or an Inventor deck, but don't run him as your ace monster. That's bad. Canon, the Melodious Diva, is another one of those where you really don't... Oh, that was the other thing that really spurred this video idea, was someone was running Canon, the Melodious Diva, with an attack boost as their ace monster, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing, my guy? Don't do that. This is awful. Like, don't, for the love of God, do not run Canon as your ace monster with an attack boost skill of all things. That is terrible and bad, and don't do it. She easily gets into unplayable. Keep in mind, I'll reiterate this again, this is exclusively looking at how the card is treated as an ace monster, not how the card is treated in general. As an ace monster, she's really bad. But as a monster, she's actually quite good, because that 1,400 and 2,000 defense, 1,400 attack, 2,000 defense stat line can allow her to take a couple hits in defense mode and then switch to attack mode and run down the lane. Sonata, the Melodious Diva, is also not a card that, much like Canon, you're not going to run her as your ace monster, and you probably are just not going to run her in general, since that 1,200 attack, 1,000 defense stat line is kind of awful. That said, she is a pretty good source of seal, so maybe run her for that. But other than that, you're not going to run Sonata. She goes into unplayable right next to her sister. And I'm very confident in that decision. Double Iris Magician is in... I'm going to put him right next to Milla, because he has 2 wizardry in his stack, and he can also have attack debuff on him, which can let his attack last even longer. Or just put Pendulum on him, or, I don't know, attack and defense reduction. It doesn't matter. If you're going to run him as your ace monster, you're probably running him in a gimmick wizardry build, and those are bad, so don't do that. He goes right next to Millie, Temporal Lady. Time Wizard! That one. We also have Performapal Silver Claw. Don't run Performapal Silver Claw as your ace monster. As with most of these rares, he's really not worth it. He has extra attack and attack support. Attack support can be fun to run on him, just in general, but if you're running Performapal Silver Claw, you're probably running him as a pendulum monster. That said, 1,800 attack, pretty good. Milla, oh no, we're giving Bomb flashbacks to some kind of weird content that he is into, God bless. Either, what is it, Library of Ruinia or Lobotomy Corp. God bless. We have Performapal Hip Hippo. It has 800 attack and defense. That said, it does, so you don't run this as your ace monster, definitely, at all. But just saying, double material, crazy ability. Double material is one of the most useful abilities in the game if you are running a ace monster that actually costs 2 resources to get out. I highly, highly, highly recommend you, at the very least, develop Performapal Hippo until you get double material out. I haven't done it myself because I've got another monster that I use as double material, but if you run a deck with multiple 2-cost monsters, definitely level Performapal Hippo. Yeah, but he goes into the absolutely dog water level of the tier list, though. Alright, Time Magician. Time! For the Magicians. Double Wizardry, same gimmick, worse than the 1,800 attack one. It's the same gimmick, just with worse stats, so you double don't run it. Actually, you know what? That's a good point, Brain. I'm gonna put all the ones that use the same gimmick in unplayable, because Millennia exists for a reason. We'll go ahead and move on there. The reason that people run her instead of any of the other ones is because she's got the best attack line for it. Needle Sunfish might actually go into meme, because Intimidate plus... Actually, no, wait, Intimidate's not the skill I thought it was. Swapping something from attack to defense position is not what you want to be doing with this card, and having one stack of focus is actually not very good. Detonated is also, in my opinion, one of the lesser abilities. I know it drops the monster's attack and defense by 500 after this card gets exploded. However, generally speaking, you want that to happen before your monster gets killed. So, especially if that monster is your ace monster. Unplayable. Coming back over here, we have Friller Robca. Friller Robca can be relatively intimidating as a monster to just splash into something, because Curse is a really, really, really good skill. Curse specifically makes it so that the monster that this monster fights can't do damage to you and cannot move for a turn after it gets blown up. So that can be useful for stalling out enemies. But that said, Friller Robca is definitely not something that you run as an ace monster. Unplayable. Same thing goes for Skullkraken. I'm not even going to really look at Skullkraken's list. So I'm pretty sure Skullkraken is basically the exact same as Friller Robca, but with a better stat line. Oh no, 100 less attack and 100 more defense. Yup, that is a minor improvement. Achacha Archer, similar setup. Achacha Archer, double snipe, not good. He has Pierce that can be useful, but his stat line isn't really good enough to help support him with it. Goes into unplayable. You'll discover that most of these are in fact in unplayable. Go Golem, however, is also not very good. I could see an argument for running Go with Inventor and double detonated and then running him down mid as a meme. But even then, that's not a very good meme, and I think that's just actually unplayably bad. Go also goes into... Oh, wait. Sorry, I keep forgetting what stream is looking at right now. Go also goes into unplayable. Since all monsters start as a normal monster, they had to make a lot of flavor text for cards that didn't have it. Yes, they did. And all the flavor text is at least interesting. Zuma Knight is over here. Zuma Knight is also something that you would not run as your ace monster. It has 1600 attack, which is not a huge value. It does have 2 focus, which can get it 400 more attack at the start of every turn, which is a 2000 attack monster immediately. Wow, that's super good. Except it needs to take up 2 slots on your fucking bar in order to do anything. And also that leaves you with 1 slot left to either put in Crusher or Extra Attack, and neither of those are really worth putting on your ace monster that has a relatively low stat line like that. Extra Attack is really useful if you can find a way to get the monster down lane really quickly, but you're probably not doing that with this card. Unplayable. Back to the tier list. I'm going to take a quick look at what our Speedy Boy here does. Our Speedy Boy here has super speed, but also has 1100 attack, which is not very good. He does have 2 attack supplement, but I don't think that's going to be very worthwhile in order to actually have anything happen, really. The double attack supplement here is only really useful if your monster leaves after the first combat, and he has 1100 attack base, which is not good. So don't run this. Imagine Robot Olympics. Alright, Vice Dragon is our next one. And this is one of the ones that I could actually be convinced to see be run as an ace monster. It has Speedy Summon, which allows it to be summoned with 1000 less attack or defense, which is actually a representation of its real game effect. I say real game like this isn't a real game. It has Intimidate. Unfortunately, it lacks a really solid third skill to be run, but that 2000 attacks, 2400 attack, the 2400 defense. Oh, Raider streamer, fuck. I'm bad. I'm very bad. Alright, I'm just gonna restart this entire segment and I assume I cut it out. Robot bad, don't play Robot. cut out that too. Vice Dragon's actually relatively decent. Unfortunately, Speedy Summon causes it to lose 1,000 attack and defense, which is very indicative of its actual Yu-Gi-Oh effect. So maybe you don't actually run this. I'm going to put it into, like, the lower end of meme. But Intimidate is a relatively decent ability just because you can have an opponent boost up a whole bunch of attack position abilities and then just swap a defense. And then, surprise, you're screwed. Unfortunately, it lacks a solid third option in terms of being an ace monster. So I don't think you run this as an ace. I'll put it into meme tier at best. Alright, next one is your boy and mine, Mad Archfiend. Mad Archfiend is also not an ace monster because it has 1800 attack and no defense, meaning a stop attack kills this. However, as an actual monster, it's pretty good. It has Pierce, it has Curse if you're looking to play more of an aggressive yet still defensive strategy. Pierce in particular is pretty strong. You really want to run a lot of things with Pierce. If this thing had multi-attack on it, I would be valuing this a lot higher, but right now, no, not really worth it. He goes into unplayable. Don't run this. I'm going to go ahead and put Dark Resonator into meme tier, purely because Dark Resonator has double material on it, which is a really good skill, and if you always start with double Resonator, you'll always be able to play a 2 tribute monster when you get it. That said, I don't think overall Dark Resonator is a great monster in any other way, because 2 focus is not enough to really make a monster good, and attack support is something that you more want to be running on something else. I would highly recommend leveling up Dark Resonator, though, because double material is super value. Dark Resonator goes there. What's our next card? Hold on. Quillbolt. Don't run Quillbolt. It may have super speed, but that doesn't mean it's really worth much. It's worse than Y Dragon Head for a super speed gimmick. Don't. Just don't. Speed Warrior is pretty much the exact same situation. That said, I could see an argument for a cohesion-based attack buff spam Speed Warrior, but even then it's not very good because cohesion requires you to play wide in order to get any value out of the card, and you're really just not going to find that. Quillbolt the Hedgehog, everyone's favorite Sonic character. This guy goes into unplayable. Like most of the rares. Most of the rares are not even remotely worth playing. Ojama Black. All of the Ojamas are in don't play this as your ace monster. They have 0 attack and 1,000 defense. That's terrible. He's got Provoke, which means that if it's for some reason attacks a defense position monster, it swaps to attack position. Don't know why that would ever happen because he has 0 attack. He's got Reincarnate. That's basically the best skill to put on him. Same thing for Ojama Green and Ojama Yellow. Someone in my last video made a comment that Ojama Green would make a good ace monster for an Invoker deck. Invoker is not in the game at the moment. They meant to say Inventor. And it's also not good for that because Reincarnation negates all the effects and causes the monster to come back as a normal card. So don't ever run an Ojama as an ace monster. They're bad. Don't do that ever, please. Elemental Hero Sparkman is also not a good ace monster. You should be seeing a trend at this point. Most rare monsters should not be run as your ace. Double extra attack is pretty solid, and Crusher can be fun, but you're generally speaking going to want to run it with, like, attack buff. You want a monster that's going to fight a lot of things over and over and over again and then regenerate the attack that it lost after it fought for Crusher to pop off really well. However, Sparkman really can't do that. So don't run Sparkman as your ace. Then we have Burstinatrix. Burstinatrix is a little bit better, but not really, because the 2-time snipe is pretty decent. You really, in my first deck, auto-made Sparkman my ace. I had no idea how to fix it. You just drag it out of the ace slot, man. Just don't run Sparkman as your ace. Just don't run any rares as your ace monster. It's not a good idea, and it always goes poorly. Snipe here can be pretty decent. I'd say always. I know some motherfucker in the comments section is going to be like, actually, I've OTK'd people 7 times with my deck. I have no doubt that you do. But that OTK is really fucking inconsistent. Just saying, like, statistics-wise, if you have a very common out that a lot of people run in your deck. That doesn't make it good. That makes it niche. Anyway, Burstinatrix I could see running in, like, a snipe deck, but again, it's one of those situations where you just don't run it as the ace of a snipe deck. Just please, don't do it. Unplayable. I have to tab so many times to get back to this screen. Avion, I'm gonna make a controversial pick here and throw Avion down there again. Avion, actually, you know what? I'll put Avion in meme. No, wait. Avion is the exact same situation as Slash Dragon, just with a better stat line. We'll swap Slash Dragon for Avion, because Slash Dragon has 1,000 attack and no defense, but also, so yeah, Slash Dragon, 1,000 attack, no defense. However, it can have 2 extra attack or multi-attack, or whatever the fuck the skill is called. Hold on. We're just gonna take this again. Slash Dragon has 1,000 attack and no defense, and can have 2 extra attack and super speed. So if you can get it a second stack of super speed, it can just run down the lane and hit your opponent for 2,000. That's pretty decent. However, Avion has 1,000 defense as opposed to no attack and the same skill setup, so run that instead if you want to do this stupid gimmick. But just don't, really. You just should not do it in the first place. Winged Kuribo. Don't run any of the, like, cutesy monsters as your ace. I appreciate that it's adorable and sweet and just a cute little furball, but don't play it as your ace because you won't have any good skills and its stat line is doo-doo. Z-Metal Tank is another situation where you might run this as an ace monster if you're trying to run something down in mid, but again, I don't think it really works out that well. Mainly because even though you can have 2 cohesion and you might be able to pump its attack and defense to a higher value than Y Dragon Head, you'd have to play your entire hand to do so, and I don't think that's worth it. Actually, you would only have to play one other monster to do so, but again, this game is a lot more... Actually, I don't think I've said this before, but so not necessarily again, but in general, you're not gonna want to run this... In Cross Duel, you want to have your resources available to you in order to counterplay at certain times. That's what makes double super speed really, really useful, is it doesn't give your opponent time to react to it. It happens instantly, which is super strong because almost everything else in this game gives your opponent time to react to it. Anyway, Z-Metal Tank goes into memed category. I'm going to put Y Dragon Head directly adjacent to it if above it because it has a better just base stat line. But Y Dragon Head, basically the exact same thing. You give Y Dragon Head super speed, maybe 2 attack debuff in order to make it go off a little more consistently. Are those ace monster cards? Yes, Ryevji, we're talking about... We're doing a tier list video for every single monster, how they would be rated for being your ace monster. And we're assuming that they have 3 skill unlocked, which means that the URs win. Just letting you know the URs are absolutely going to win this hard. Xhead Canon. Xhead Canon is not a great ace monster, just because he doesn't have a lot of cohesion between all of his skills. Inventor is kind of just a gimmick skill. Snipe itself is not really playing into anything that he does. However, if you are running Xhead Canon and you're not running an Exodia deck, I highly recommend putting attack debuff on him because that effectively makes him a 2100 attack monster for no tribute, while also letting him, technically speaking, go further and further up with the attack the more times that he fights an attack position monster. He is a great monster to throw down mid if you're not running a super speed meme combo. Xhead's good, however, he's a bad ace. Don't run him. Vorse Raider, however, is a card that you should run in pretty much every deck because he's the only monster with 1900 attack right now. He also has a very useful combination of skills, namely a defense debuff and pierce, which can allow him to run down any defensive-minded opponent that you happen to be going up against. He's also got attack supplement, so he can do it again and again and again. Vorse Raider's really good. I think you should run Vorse Raider, and I'm actually going to put him in meme because of this, because that's actually pretty decent. Having 3 skills on him would allow you to really kind of screw with the defensive decks that people can play. That said, we now go to Giant Soldier of Stone. Don't play Giant Soldier of Stone as your ace monster, because he does nothing. I mean, he's got a pretty good stat line. If you're running him in just a deck, he's probably one of the better defensive monsters to throw down because 1300 attack is respectable. If your opponent burns all of your resources running stuff down your lane, and then all of a sudden he's survived with, you know, some value less than 2000, he can just run forward. He goes into unplayable. As a card, he's good, but as an ace, he's awful. Pretty much the exact same situation with Celtic Guardian. Celtic Guardian is not good. He's got Pierce and extra attack, which can be pretty good, but you really should just not run him as your ace. There's better options if you want to go hyper aggressive. Also, Intimidate is not a great thing to have on something that clearly wants to be swinging at face, because at that point, the goal is to get it directly up to your opponent. And even then, you're hoping that Celtic Guardian doesn't die immediately to the defense position value of the monster that you're fighting when you're at your opponent's face, which is unlikely because most defense position monsters that people are running in this game are 2000, if not like a little bit less or higher than that. So having Celtic Guardian actually survive to get the extra attack boost off of the Pierce is unlikely. Don't play it. Okay, we have moved from the rares. Also, Kuribo's here. Don't play Kuribo. For the love of God, just don't. I know double attack debuff is pretty strong. Being able to drop any monster that you fight by 600 is a lot of value that you can get off of a monster, but his stat line is 300, 200, and he dies to anything, so don't run it. Don't. Archfiend Eccentric we have moved into the cards that I do not have. Archfiend Eccentric, though, has the special skill that the opponent in the lane ahead can't activate trap cards. A very useful tech card to put into something probably pretty decent for a Pendulum deck as well. Don't run this as your ace, though. It's not strong enough to really get you any value, and you're not in the situation where you are desperate enough to be like, haha, I got you. I'm running down everything for my super killer combo turn. Take this, Archfiend Eccentric, now your traps can't be activated. You want that more as a side tech card that you draw into, as opposed to a card that's going to sit in your hand the entire game and do nothing. Anyway, moving on, we have Dowser Dragon, or Dragon Dowser. The cutest beam. I love this thing. Look at how cute this guy is. I absolutely love him. If you run any Pendulum card, it's useless as an ace unless it's intended to be the ace, since the pen cards are materials, basically. Yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to playing a Pendulum deck, the only really valid ace card to run in that is Odd Eyes. Odd Eyes is really, really good, especially if you are running him as the ace of a Pendulum deck. That said, if you have the ace being anyone else, you kind of lose a lot of the staying power of Pendulum decks in general. So don't do that. Don't really... If you find a monster that is a Pendulum monster, and you are like, wow, this could go really well, don't... If you're planning on running it as part of a Pendulum deck, just don't. Just simply do not. Dragon Dowser, though, is a really good card to run in a Pendulum deck because he can fetch back a Pendulum monster and have it still retain its Pendulum skill. Pretty solid. Bad ace monster. Unplayable. Cute boy, though. Love him. Absolute being. White Magician Pikeru is a fun card because for each other monster you control, it gains one healer. It can also have Curse and Wizardry, which means that someone is going to be stupid and try and OTK with it. Don't. Just simply do not. It's not worth your time. Just don't do it. It's not a value ace monster. It's more of a tech card that you can draw into because Curse is pretty strong, and the healing aspect can help out. But really, you're just not going to run it as an ace, as I've mentioned several times. Just don't do it. Doriado has one Wizardry, which means that it is not an OTK valid target. And its special skill retrieves a spell card. So if you ever have one spell card that's really good, or you think that you can win main pretty consistently, play Doriado, have it die, and then do a thing. Regardless, it's not worth it. Don't run Doriado as your ace. It's not that good. It's a good tech card, like most of these, but it's not worth playing as your ace. Hold on, I have to recheck. Fun fact, I think you can summon any tribute-needed monster, not special summons, but with the pendulum scale, taking it from talking from summoning summons. Yeah, that's like how the text reads on the rules for pendulum summoning, is that you literally just summon something without paying the tributes, which makes pendulum decks actually pretty good if you just want to play big stuff. God bless. Sports Dragon Pitcher is our next one, a card that most people are not going to be familiar with because it is a Rush Duel card. The double cohesion is a fun gimmick. The snipe is certainly good. Its special skill is pretty strong because it helps you punish defense position players even more. However, again, it's a support card. Don't run it with anything else. You run this when you are playing an anti-defense style deck. It also has 0 attack and 1,000 defense. That stat line is so abysmal that you would never, ever, ever, ever run this as an ace for anything. Sports Dragon Slugger. He has the special effect of giving all of your monsters with extra attack an additional 500. Pretty strong. He can also have 2 extra attack himself. However, he has 1,000 attack base and no defense. Again, basically just a support card that can be pretty fun in tag duels, but definitely not the kind of thing that you want to run as an ace monster. D, unplayable. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, Seven's Road Mage is also unplayable, as well as Seven's Road Magician. Seven's Road Mage has 2 Wizardry, which can him pretty valuable if you want to run the stupid fucking OTK thing. However, he's got 800 attack, which is 1,000 less than the other OTK meme mage, so don't. Just run her instead if you're looking to do it. And his ability is very much so based on screwing over, you know, enemies that are going up against Inventor decks. A support card. And Seven's Road Witch requires a single tribute and is 1,600 attack, which is awful. It does have 2 cohesion, which can get the stat line up a little bit further, but generally speaking, that's a little bit too much resource intensive for a absolutely fucking terrible stat line. Its skill, however, is pretty good. Oh, hey, Zoom PTG, thank you for the follow. Its skill here, being Inventor, well, its skill here allowing you to grab an Inventor card is pretty useful, especially because it doesn't negate the skills of the Inventor card that's coming back. So you can actually play Seven's Road Magician with this and have it run down lane so long as you actually gave it an Inventor skill, and then bounce it back to your hand and just play it again for even more value. However, that would require Seven's Road Witch to not be your ace card, meaning it goes into absolute garbage for an ace. By the way, Zoom, we are currently making a video. This is all being recorded and gonna get thrown up on YouTube later, for ranking every card as an ace monster. And as you can see, most of the SRs and Rs are not worth it. Anyway, continuing. Trickstar Narcissus is a fucking awful name and I hate it. Similar situation, it's very much so a support card. It's here to grab a snipe monster and retain it with snipe. Well, there goes my trash typing all recorded. Yep, there you go. It'll be here forever. And Trickstar Narcissus is not worth being your ace monster. Much like Candidia here, it's just not really... You know what, actually? I'll give it this. Trickstar Candidia... Candina? Megaphone is actually pretty funny if you wanted to run something that is counter to the stupid OTK style decks that people run every once in a while, because it can burn them for a whole shitload of damage if they try and do their OTK thing, which is hilarious, but not worth running your ace. You definitely run it as a side tech card. Let's go ahead and put these 2 where they belong. In unplayable. I'm gonna just throw Link Kuribo in there in unplayable as well. Link Kuribo is definitely not the kind of thing that you want to run as your main. Granted, it does have a pretty solid skill set. Its special skill, when it is destroyed by battle, immediately drops the attack of the monster that battled with it to 0, which is pretty useful. It also has Seal and Curse, meaning that you can literally just drop a Link Kuribo on the field and turn off someone else's monster, which is strong as hell. You might... you know what? This is gonna go in meme. I take it back. I take it back. Link Kuribo, I'm gonna put you in meme. You know why? Because Link Kuribo is effectively a counter ace monster. If someone runs an ace monster down your lane, you can summon Link Kuribo and just turn that motherfucker off. So yeah, useful, but probably not the strategy you're going to want to go through. Because you probably want to play something that actually is going to gain you advantage instead of countering someone else's advantage. Backup Secretary, it's another one of those situations where you probably don't want to run this as an ace. It's a really good tech card because of the special skill giving something 2 attack supplement, gaining 400 attack at the end of every battle phase. Real quick, come here.
If you put this on Utopia, it's fucking disgusting. If you do that, it's holy shit good. Don't run this as an ace monster, but if you can throw this effect on a Utopia, you're going to cause someone to have a very, very bad time. We'll go into it when we get to Utopia, but you'll see, this thing is disgusting.
Don't run it as your ace, it's bad. Sorry, I almost put it in meme. Now we get to one of the ones that's an actual viable card to be put into the ace monster slot. If you do not, if for some reason you're playing a Link deck and you don't have Firewall Dragon, I'd say Decode Talker is actually a serviceable ace monster. Because he gains basically the exact same effects as not the exact same effects, but he has the same gimmick as Firewall Dragon, where based on the number of Link monsters or monsters with Link Arrow on your field or in your graveyard, he gets a variety of powerful effects. 2 attack buffs whenever he fights anything and immunity to position change are not amazing, but when combined with stuff like Provoke, which prevents your opponents from going and sitting in defense position, and attack supplement, you can really kind of wind up in a pretty strong position. Or alternatively, you could just run 2 attack buffs along with it and give him 1200 attack every time he swings at something, which is kind of terrifying and can work pretty well. I'm gonna put, you know what? I'm gonna put Decode Talker. Decode Talker, you get to be our first gimmick one. It's inconsistent and it's definitely not the kind of thing that you want to run when you have a Firewall Dragon in any level of development, but I think a deck running Decode Talker might actually have chops to it. Soprano, the Melodious Songstress, it's a support card for healing. 2 times Cohesion is not going to save you from that double 1400 attack and defense stat line. Aria, the Melodious Diva, is a targeted slowdown effect. It also has Seal and attack debuff, which could be relatively useful, but again, it's a support card. Don't run it. Both of these ladies go into unplayable. I'm going to put Performapal Flip Toad in there as well. I know what Flip Toad does, and it's not worth much. Flip Toad is yet another one of those support cards that you splash into a deck. It's a Sword and Shield on legs. You replace this with Sword and Shield. Congratulations. Gameplay. Deck building. Big brain. Let's go. Anyway, Stargazer Magician is another one of those cards that is a support card. The stat line is pretty awful. You definitely don't want to speedy summon this thing because it losing 1000 attack and defense would cause it to be kind of fucking awful. That said, when played in combination with your Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, it can be pretty good because it can give you immunity to destroy. Actually, no, don't play it in combination with Pendulum Dragon. I don't know when you play Stargazer. Pendulum Dragon provides immunity to destruction effects with its master skill already, making it kind of redundant. Yeah, finding scales can generally be a pretty hard time. Which, by the way, look at my water bottle. For no reason. For no reason. Just look at it. Just saying. But yeah, you'll probably, if you run this in a Pendulum deck, you're probably running it with a scale, and you're probably not running it at all because it requires a sacrifice to get out on the board, and that's kind of bad. Unplayable. Unplayable in the base game, probably. Even not considering, like, Master, or, Deck Master? Question mark? Big Jaws! So, Big Jaws is actually part of the Focus archetype that sort of exists in this game. Focus in general is not a very good skill. It's just 200 attack at the start of every turn, which is not a lot of attack. It's better than attack boost because it triggers repeatedly, but it's not the sort of thing that's going to get you a lot of value. What comes through value with Focus is its ability to be comboed with other skills. There are a lot of cards that read, if you have Focus, do this. Big Jaws in particular is a very scary monster which can give your monster stealth, which effectively allows your monster to slip across your opponent's lines and immediately get in for some direct damage. Very, very strong, not as an ace monster. A very good support card. Most of the SR monsters are support cards. He goes into unplayable. Looking at his skill set, he doesn't have the skills to be a good ace. He's got a decent stat line. The 1800 attack is pretty good, and combining that with Crusher and attack buff can be fun, but no, you don't run him. Gaga Girl! Select a monster you control. This monster's level becomes equal to the selected monster's level. She's also got 2 wizardry, but also 1000 attack. Don't run her as your ace. She's the same gimmick when it comes to the thing, except she's also pretty good, honestly, because you can actually have her be run in order to get basically a free Xyz monster out onto the board. I don't like her though. You really shouldn't run her as your ace monster. She's basically unplayable. Same thing with Gaga Magician, by the way. He's got the double wizardry thing, but only 1500 attack. If you're going for the 8 OTK strat, you're not running Gaga Magician for it. Gaga Magician can also modulate his level, which is very useful because if you're running combination with Gaga Girl, you can essentially have his level become whatever you want for whatever XE summon that you need on the next turn if you're playing them both in defense position. But not a good ace monster. We're gonna get a actual monster tier list out here one of these days, but we'll get there eventually. Debris Dragon has a special skill where you select a monster with 500 or less attack in your graveyard and bounce it back to your hand, but its skills are negated, which is basically reincarnation, just with the extra step. It's not good. Don't run it, especially not as an ace. It's got a good stat line with 2000 defense and 1000 attack. If you're running an Exodia deck, you probably run this thing, but don't run it aside from that, especially as an ace monster. That's bad. Now we get to another one of those monsters that actually could probably stand on its own legs. We're also drawing very close to Stream Raiders making noise and polluting the audio, so I'm scared. We have the special skill of Junk Warrior, where he gains attack and defense for each level 3 or lower monster in your field or in your graveyard, which is a distinct improvement over his actual TCG counterpart. Junk Warrior can be pretty solidly good. I don't know if he makes it quite into gimmick status. He might still be in meme. Hold on. We'll go do that in a second. Editor, please cut that out. He's also got 2 useful skills. Cohesion. Running him with this and 2 stacks of Cohesion can really help you do a lot of work, because that will get him a large amount of value because you've probably dumped a whole bunch of level 3 or lower monsters into the graveyard just by playing your deck. And Cohesion, you're probably running them with Reincarnate on them. It will allow you to then play those cards again and get yet even more buffs off of him. I would say, you know what? Junk Warrior's decent enough that I'm going to put him into Gimmick. He's not good, but he is gimmicky. We're going to raise up the vision up to here. I'm going to go ahead and say Junk Synchron goes down in here because he is support. Say it with me once again, he is support. Yep, he fetches a level 2 or lower monster from your graveyard, add to your hand, it gets negated. Bada bing, bada boom. It's a good low-level monster spam card for your Synchro Summon Stardust Dragon deck, but overall, it's not very good. An okay inventor, though, I guess, maybe. Okay, Flame Wingman is actually pretty good. I'd say Flame Wingman, unlike a lot of these monsters where it's the former ace of a protagonist from before they got their actual ace monster, Flame Wingman actually could stand on his own as a pretty unique deck. Giving him his special skill and 2 crushers means that every time that he kills a monster, he's going to do 900 damage to your opponent. If you can also play the Secretary to give him, what is it, 400, 600 attack back at the end of every turn? No, it's 800 because it's attack supplement and it regenerates. Yeah, giving him 800 attack back at the end of every turn can be pretty intimidating. I'd say Flame Wingman definitely gets strong enough to go into gimmick tier. He's not great, but he's definitely, like, playable. I could see someone running... If someone played Elemental Hero Flame Wingman as their ace monster, it's like, I understand. That makes sense. Dark Magician Girl, kind of a support card, too. She's probably better than your other candidates for the Wizardry OTK strat, because she has 2 Wizardry and can get something like Seal or Attack debuff. That said, she's still not great. She requires 1 Tribute, which might be a little too rich for your blood, but she does have a higher starting attack value than the 1800 lady, so who knows? Maybe if you're looking to OTK, you run Dark Magician Girl for whatever reason. So that's good enough that I'm going to put her into meme. That's good enough that it has like, balancing considerations. She goes into meme. One here, get out of that. Black Luster Soldier is pretty crazy, honestly. I could see this might be our first rogue one, because BLS has this special skill which basically lets him use 3 monsters to have an extra 3 skills slapped onto him. And using him as a skill monkey can be pretty strong. S tier, I don't think he's S tier. I think he's good. I think he's definitely like an actual deck, as opposed to a lot of these, which are either inferior versions of actual decks with better ace monsters, or decks that have a gimmick that aren't amazing. But BLS is definitely, like, strong compared to the other cards that we've seen thus far. Seal is really good. That can shut down a lot of opponents' monsters. Attack Supplement combined with 2 other attack supplements lets him be basically unkillable. And Attack Buff gives him yet even more on top of that unkillable nature of his. You can also kind of tech him out with stuff like Crusher or another attack buff if you really want to get things kind of experimental. Blackluster Soldier, definitely our first A tier card. He actually works as a pretty solid ace monster. I'll give him that. He is rogue. Even though he's listed as a soldier, he goes in as a rogue. Gaia the Fierce Knight. Okay, Gaia is another one of those cards that I'm actually going to put into A tier. This is because his special skill is all of your monsters gain super speed. If you're running a super speed focused deck, he's quite strong. You might have heard me mention earlier that super speed specifically is not incredibly useful when it's just 1 stack, because it still takes 2 turns for your monsters to get to your opponent to actually do the thing that you played the monster to do. However, if you have 2 stacks of super speed, it only requires 1 turn, which gives your opponent no time to react to anything. You can also give him Pierce, meaning that if your opponents do run something in defense position while he sprints down the lane, he'll still get to attack because he's got a pretty good attack value. That said, if they're running something with 2,000 defense, it's only going to be a meager 300 damage. But hey, the 300 cannon damage can be the difference between winning and losing. I'm gonna give my opinion here. I feel like Blackluster Odd Eyes and the Magician's Road Magicians guy are the strongest. I do not know how the XEs work, so I'm not including those. We'll get there. You'll see. Again, we're working up to it. Also, hi Chris, how's it going? I'd say Gaia definitely is strong enough to go into A tier. You just need to make sure that all of your monsters have super speed if you're running him, because if you're playing it like that, if you're playing him as the head of a super speed focused deck, he can be quite strong. Summon Skull, however, we're breaking the trend of the dual monsters card, the dual monsters, SR monsters being actually like heads of their own deck. I don't think Summon Skull is really the head of his own deck. I think he's just a great supplementary card for defense-hating decks, specifically because he has defense debuff, extra attack, intimidate. All of these can be pretty strong, especially if you're running down enemies and you want to specifically screw over defense things. Intimidate can be pretty useful. Defense debuff is good, and extra attack can help him punish opponents that have actually played things in defense. Yeah, ReFG in chat has it right. Summon Skull is like a secondary auxiliary strong card. He's 1 tribute for 2,500, 1,200 stat line. That's pretty decent. You're probably not going to play him in defense, so the defense doesn't really matter that much. But that said, if you're desperate to run a defense-hating deck, you could probably run Summon Skull, but I wouldn't really recommend it. He goes into gimmick tier. mostly just because he is like he's like a patchwork head of a deck that should have a better ace monster. That's what these three represent. These three represent more than anything else ace monsters that have a deck that is already playable, but isn't like there yet, you know? Alright, now we're gonna do... Oh, wait, is that it? Are we onto the... Oh, we are onto the URs. Okay, time for some spicy takes, boys. Here we go. These are the big ones. Welcome to the realm of S, A, and B tier. None of these are gonna get any lower than that. Spoiler alert. Sorry, gotta hydrate. Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius has a very terrifying extra skill, namely, or not an extra skill, a master skill, namely when all of your monsters have extra attack. Then, if your monsters have 2 or more extra attack, they gain Pierce. This is one of the most super aggro cards that you want to run in decks. I keep wanting to call it multi-attack. It's extra attack. Or I keep wanting to call it multi-strike, just off of Dragius's name. He's kind of the head of the multi-strike extra attack. I literally just said it. He's kind of the head of the extra attack centered deck. And as such, you'll run him in decks like that. How good is he? His main issue is that he does not have any baked-in way to gain Pierce. Because if he did, that would make him really strong. So instead, you need to kind of run cards that give him Pierce. This also comes with the issue of Intimidate. You really don't want to be hitting into a defense position monster, because if you do, that means that you're gonna not actually attack directly and get the multi-strike thing that you're looking for, and your opponent can probably just play another defense position monster in front of him, and that's it for Dragius. That said, him having an extra attack inherently, I'm gonna put him into the same tier as the other... I'm going to put him into Rogue tier. He can definitely make plays, and with proper timing and the right way of doing things, I don't think he's low enough to be in Gimmick. I think he can make plays, and the cards that he supports with his play style are strong enough that that gets him inherently into A tier. Now this one's gonna sting a little bit, because I like Seven's Road Magician. Seven's Road Magician is the deck that I would like to build up. I love the Inventor deck. His master skill is he gains 400 attack and defense for every time that your monsters have activated Inventor for this duel. If the effect of your Inventor's monsters have been activated 4 or more times this duel, he also gains 2 random immunity skills, like immunity to negative status, attack or defense lower, He's pretty good. I'll give him this. He's actually really, really strong, especially if you're running him in combination with Seven's Road Witch, because she can fetch him back if he dies and you have multiple things unlocked. Specifically, if he has Inventor, that makes him even better, because that can give him a random skill, and he has Seal, which can really help screw over opposing monsters. I think, actually, now that I look at those, because I've only been able to play him with 1 thing unlocked, if you're playing him with 1, he goes into Gimmick. It's unfortunate, but it's true. He has a large stat line, and he can run down and hit stuff, but he can also, he's pretty fragile, and he can die really easily without giving you a lot of sustained board pressure, and you sort of require a lot of setup to really get him to work. That said, if you're running him in a perfect world, he goes into A. He's not S tier, but he's definitely good. He's definitely, like, playable and solid enough to stand on his own. Going into here, we move back. Trickstar Holly Angel. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I think Trickstars go into Gimmick tier. The main thing of this is the Trickstars all have a relatively decent stat line. They're not bad, they're not amazing. But Holly Angel only really makes it so that your monster's snipe effects deal 100 more damage. So you'd have to play a lot... Well, it's not just 100 more damage. It's 100 more damage and they hit everyone, which is strong. You kind of need to play a lot of, what's it called? You need to play a lot of snipe monsters while she's on the field in order to have her actually do anything, is the issue. And her stat line isn't great, with 2,000 attack main and, like, no attack defense. like at base you could probably link somewhere with something else, but do you gain life point from burn damage? No, you do not. That is an important distinction. Like, she's not great. I don't think she's in C tier. I don't think she's in meme tier. I think she's in gimmick tier. But she's like at the bottom of gimmick tier, solidly. I'll move these around and figure out where different people go. Because, like, you can make stuff work with... Because I think the thing that pushes her into gimmick tier as opposed to being in meme tier is the fact that it makes the snipes AoE. And you're going to constantly drag people's HP down by playing her. That said, I don't think she's great. She's, like, bottom of B tier. She only barely manages to edge into B tier with the AoE effect. Because, like, 300 snipe is just... It's not great. I'm sorry, Trickstar players. She's not amazing. Who's our next one? Our next one is Firewall. This is gonna be a tight one, because Firewall is really good. If you're playing Firewall as the head of a linked deck, which you should be, and we're going to judge him off of that, he is absurdly strong. Much like how, what's his name? Decode Talker and BLS have special abilities that effectively just give them a whole bunch of extra abilities. Firewall Dragon does the same thing, but instead of doing that, he gives himself immunity to being swapped position and 2 super speed stacks, which is disgusting. Like, holy fuck. Being able to throw down a 2500 attack dragon to instantly sprint down lane can ruin so many people's day. If you've, like, just left someone alone for most of the game and just let them not put anything in your lane, and they've, for some reason, not put anything down, you can just win the game off of Firewall Dragon getting played, because he'll sprint down the lane and punch him in the face for 2500 and give you a massive life point lead. And on top of that, his other skills are pretty good too. Defense debuff can help him if he actually runs into a defense position monster. He's also got attack buff, which isn't great, but he's got Crusher, which can do guaranteed damage. He also bounces a card back to hand, which can let him just punch them in the face. It's a little hard to get there because you need a lot of monsters with link arrows and link monsters, so you need to kind of draw into the right cards in order to get that to go off. But getting 3 of those into play is, generally speaking, relatively easy. I'm going to actually... Firewall is either at the top of A tier or the bottom of S tier. Because he's good. He's real. I'd say of the monsters that, like, you play them and they get a bunch of skills, he's definitely the top of this. So we've kind of formed a pyramid here. I'm gonna, you know, just to differentiate him from BLS and just to say that he's better than BLS, I say Firewall Dragon is up there. You just need to play him in a link deck, which I'm assuming if you're running any of these as the ace monsters that require you to run a specific deck, you're running that deck. Like you should be. These are kind of perfect world scenarios. Except for fucking gimmicky OTK builds. That's not how this works. Our next one is Bloom Diva the Melodious Choir. Her master skill is every time that you gain life points with an effect, all of your monsters gain defense equal to the life points gained. While on the field, your healers restore 100 more life points than normal. I think this could be a decently menacing deck. The only issue with it is that it requires you to wait 8 turns to win the game and assumes that no one is going to actually come and attack you. It can help, you know, bolstering your defense by a huge amount. That can be pretty strong. The main issue is that her other skills don't really support this idea. The 200 defense for everyone else is pretty alright, but it's not great. The fact that she's got 3 slots wasted on a defense boost of all things is not good. The 2 healer can help out a lot. I forgot to notice that she has 2 healer things. And Curse kind of defeats the purpose of the monster. You kind of want the monster to stick around as opposed to dying. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, the 2 healers is pretty good because it gives her... Is it all other monsters? Give 100 more for heal? Or is it just... It is just your monsters, which basically means that she's 2600 defense and she can only go up if you can find a way to continuously play heal monsters. The main issue with this is that you need to find a way to continuously play heal monsters because heal monsters are tending to be defensive, which means they're going to eat up your lanes, which means it's going to be hard to play them repeatedly. You could also rely on spells and traps that restore life points, but there's not a lot of those in the game. So, I'm going to put her next to Trickstar Holy Angel. She's not great, but she's not bad. She's a gimmick. Now we get to the spooky man himself, Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon is fucking terrifying. I think this is one of the scariest cards to play, because when you slap him onto the field after being summoned with the pendulum scales, or a pendulum summoning as a normal human being would put it, say it, whatever, he gains 800 attack and defense and immediately gives everything on your board also another 800 attack and defense, and everything gets destruction immunity. Meaning that Blue Eyes can cope, seethe, mauled, piss, shit, come, and die. He's terrifying. Highly recommend running Odd Eyes. I think he gets into at least A tier just with that master skill, which is doubly compounded on by the fact that he has attack support, and he can have 2 attack support, which can actually turn that 800 buff to 1200, and you can recover him. I think all that combined pushes him into S tier. And honestly, there's immunity to bounce and teleport. I'll be real with you, Chief. You don't want that, because if someone bounces him back to your hand, you can just play him again and buff your entire board again. It's disgusting. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think I closed the wrong thing. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon's an S tier. He is filthy. Filthy. Absolutely disgusting. One of the best ace monsters in the game. Then we have Leviathan Dragon. Imagine bouncing a pendulum summon. Yeah, like, they're just gonna do it again. Leviathan Dragon, I don't think is actually very good. I'll be real. His entire focus is on focus. He gives all of your monsters on the board a stack of focus, and all of your monsters gain 100 more attack from focus. The main issue with this is that that's only 300 more attack. That's only 300 more attack with focus. If you're running something with that already has focus, that's 600 attack. That's pretty good, especially because it's going to be a constant gain, and it can kind of combo together with certain cards that really gel with focus. And if you give him 2 focuses on himself, that's 900 attack every turn, which is pretty decent. That's pretty good. Really solid. The main issue with him is that he has 0 defense. He has no defense at all. So if anyone plays Sword and Shield, Stop Attack, Enemy Controller, he's completely useless. He's just going to get run up and die. The other issue is the fact that in order to constantly get benefits from his effects, he needs to stay on the field, which means he needs to run down a lane because he needs to be in attack position, which means that he stands the chance of dying even though he's gaining a bunch of stats. I don't know, I don't think a Leviathan Dragon is very good. He also requires you to run a lot of level 3s in order to actually get him on the field with that. I'd say if he goes, he is either top of Gimmick or bottom of Rogue. I'm going to be generous and put him on bottom of Rogue. Just because if you build him with focus, with a focus, what the fuck, and also with stealth, if you slap stealth on him, he's pretty good, because he's not going to have to run into any monsters until he gets down the lane for a while. I think enough of that combines together to make him pretty decent in Rogue. Just be afraid of any spells or traps that are going to come in and just completely ruin him. Because they will come. Utopia is, in my opinion, competing for one of the 2 best ace monsters in the game. Utopia is disgusting. Like, he is so good. The reason why is every time that he destroys a monster in battle, Utopia gives himself 3 stacks of attack debuff. Attack debuff makes it so that every time that you battle an opponent's monster, it loses 300 attack. This means that when Utopia blows a monster up, that every monster that he fights from then on is going to have 900 less attack. If Utopia kills another monster, every monster that he fights from then on is going to have 1900 less attack. If he kills another, you see where this is going. It just fucking stampedes out of control. Granted, it does get stopped by defense position. But you can put Intimidate on him and cause any monster, or I think it's Provoke. You can put Provoke on him with a funny little card that is in rare and is pretty easy to get called Battle Mania, which turns all of your monsters that you fight into attack position. Combine this with the previously established backup secretary strat, and you have a monster that is virtually unkillable. The only way to get rid of him would be to switch him into defense position, but oh wait, he also has 2k defense. Utopia is disgusting. You could also give him Seal, an inherent attack supplement, or an attack or even more stacks attack debuff. It doesn't matter. Utopia is really, really, really good. Just that master skill alone pushes him into S tier, and all the other skills that you can give him and all the other cards that you can use to buff him up even further push him yet even farther into being just completely and utterly busted. He also requires level 4s, the most common type in the game, because you're going to run so many level 4 monsters in this game. Yeah, run Utopia. Run Utopia. If you have Utopia, he's disgusting. He's really, really, really good. He goes at the top of S tier. Which kind of ruins our little totem pole that we had there, but oh well. Our next one is Red Dragon Archfiend. I don't think Red Dragon Archfiend is as strong as Utopia, which is unfortunate because he's got to follow him up. Red Dragon Archfiend has, at the end of the battle phase, destroy all defense position monsters. What this does is this completely screws over defensive focused decks. If you're running the life point spam, or if you're running Exodia, Red Dragon Archfiend kind of fucks you over completely. He is the poster boy of fuck defense, to the point that he has Pierce, Intimidate, and Defense debuff on 2 stacks. If you really, 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 really hate people stacking defense, run RDA. He's actually quite strong for that. Overall, though, he kind of requires a decent amount of monsters to get out in a really specific order. Actually, that said, now that I think about it, if you're running level 4s, he doesn't require that much because you could basically use him as a rank 4 synchro just by attributing 2 level 4 monsters, since that's the way that synchro works in this game. So honestly, RDA, pretty good, really. As it turns out, I would say RDA is on the stronger end of monsters. I'm not gonna put him into S tier, because I think defense hate is something that can only take you so far. Intimidate does help with that, but I'm gonna put him at the top of A. He's quite strong in A tier. Alright, next one is Stardust Dragon. So Stardust Dragon, if you guys have ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, the series where Stardust Dragon is from, he is mostly based, he and Yusei's whole gimmick is based around like self-sacrifice, taking junk and turning it into gold. Like tattered majesty is the idea behind Stardust Dragon. And he really does help with that idea in Cross Duel, maybe to his detriment. His whole master skill is, while he is on the field, all of your level 3 or lower monsters gain reincarnation. Oh, that's a valid point for RDA that ReevG brings up here. And yet, I'm going to actually knock him to probably the middle of the road for... I'm going to put him above Gaia. He does have the issue of blowing himself up if he ever gets flipped into defense position. That happens, he just dies, which is really galling if you're running, you know, your ace monster, runs down lane, gets swapped to defense, explodes. Oof. Not fun. So we'll put him in the middle of the lane on A, but I think he still definitely deserves to be an A tier, just because his skill combination is in a really good position to help him fuck over defense position monsters. Stardust Dragon's biggest thing that he likes to do is cohesion. Cohesion is every time that you play a monster, you gain 200 attack and defense. What he likes to do is you want to pair him with his master skill, his reincarnation, and a cohesion. This will allow you to synchro summon Stardust Dragon, he'll get on the board, and then every time that one of your dudes gets blown up, you can play them again and get his stats up a little bit. Ideally, if you are running this kind of build, you may or may not be running monsters with reincarnation, but you're probably running what the strategy is with Stardust Dragon is you're going to run certain monsters with reincarnation, that way they can be used to bring Stardust Dragon out, and you're going to run monsters with cohesion in order to get the benefit from playing multiple monsters. It's a cool idea, and I think it works alright. I just don't think he's great. Him having reincarnation really helps because he's a 2500 body that you can throw down twice. That's pretty value. Granted, you have to kind of sacrifice things to get him out there, but still, it's pretty alright. And it helps him tank hits that might have otherwise been really unfortunate for him. That said, I think overall he's only decent as an ace monster. I'm gonna put him above Leviathan Dragon, but below Seven's Road. Because unlike Seven's Road, he can't come back and get his full value again. He can only come back and just get his stats again. Alright, next one, Ojama King. I'm gonna be real with you guys. This is pretty unsubtle. He goes into gimmick tier. He goes probably at the bottom of gimmick tier. He's not great. Ojama King requires very specific materials to be fused, specifically 3 level 3 or lower monsters, which is not a great look for you because level 3 and lower monsters aren't amazing in this game. There's a couple good ones, but overall they're not fantastic. And his master skill is you select an opponent, and they cannot summon monsters to any monster zone until the end of their next turn. Which can be a death blow for certain people, certainly. It's definitely a strong thing to do, and it can really help you screw someone over. I think the other thing that is really good about Ojama King is his special skill, which is you pick one of your opponent's monster zones, and no monsters can be summoned to that zone until the end of the next turn. I don't know if having the special skill on Ojama King makes it so that he requires fusion, but if it doesn't require fusion, that's pretty strong. You could throw Ojama King into a deck with a special skill, I don't know, run something like Firewall Dragon or something like that, and then sacrifice 2 things, get him onto the board, turn off your opponent from summoning any monsters in that lane, and then run Firewall Dragon down the lane and punch him in the face. That sort of thing. Pretty good. Ojama King, overall though, as an ace monster, is kind of awful. He really wants to be used in a defensive deck, but he just kind of doesn't have a win condition. The whole point of Cross Duel is to have something that you're doing to get a leg up over your opponents, and Ojama King kind of doesn't. He sort of just turtles without any real plan. You could run some life point increasing things, and you could run some burn cards, but really overall, Ojama King as a deck, or as the head of a deck, doesn't do anything. So he's very solidly in gimmick tier here. Now we get to the other #1 monster that I think is probably the best monster to run as an ace in this game, Elemental Hero Neos. Elemental Hero Neos does not go away. He sticks around and constantly gives you trouble. The way that he works is, with his master skill, when he gets destroyed in battle, he bounces back to your hand and gains Speedy Summon and Super Speed. Also, if he is your ace monster, he can just have Super Speed and Speedy Summon. One thing that we didn't mention about Speedy Summon is that if you have 2 stacks of Speedy Summon, you get Efficient Summon, which just lets the monster be summoned with 1 less material. Basically what this does is, if you play Neos 1 time and he runs down a lane and dies, you can then proceed to turn any monster you draw into Neos. Except now, when he dies, he goes back to your hand and sprints down the lane instantly. The entire thing that Firewall Dragon does, yeah, Neos does that too. Except he doesn't die when he is killed. He comes back, and he does it again, repeatedly. It's terrifying. I'll also mention, he's fantastic in raids for this reason, because he can just constantly hit the board for nothing. He is basically a consistent source of damage to the boss. I would say, I haven't talked about raids for any of the other monsters, and we're definitely not talking about them in terms of, like, that doesn't really factor into Neos' ranking on the list, but I'm just saying if you run raids, Neos is a fantastic ace monster for it. I know he has fucking healing things, but it's more of a side tech thing. Anyway, Neos, absolutely top of S tier. He goes next to Utopia. If you pressured me to say which one is better, Utopia or Neos, I kind of consider them to be the same. Both of them are sort of screwed over by Seal. Seal is something that can really completely shut both of them down because if Neos gets destroyed after being sealed, he doesn't come back. And the other thing that really screws over Neos is effect destruction. If he gets popped by something, for instance, the next card we look at, he doesn't return and he does not continue the cycle. However, not many people run effect destruction stuff. Most of the spell and trap cards that do effect destruction in this game can be found in the middle, so if you're running him down against someone that doesn't have the middle card, they're kind of screwed. And Utopia, kind of, when Utopia goes away, Utopia doesn't come back, which is sort of true of most of these cards, so we can't really judge them of that. It's just really hard. If you have the proper setup, Utopia is almost impossible to get rid of, outside of popping. Why this and not Master Duel? Because I'm playing Cross Duel and making a tier list for this? Because I'm making tier list about this? This is content? What a question. Why are you playing this and not Master Duel? I don't know, because I like this game? Because I find it fun? Because making content on this game has propelled my YouTube channel further than I've ever had it go before? Like, what do you want from me? Because I like it. It's good content. Anyway, weird questions from chat aside, Blue Eyes White Dragon. He's wacky. He's ridiculously good, and I consider him to be another one of those S-tier ace monsters, which, by the way, guess what? He's an S-tier. Almost entirely off of this master skill. When he is summoned, you select a thing and pop it. But the important thing to mention about this is when that happens, because it happens, I believe, just before people activate spells and trap cards for the battle phase. This means you can run him in, if you were running up against monsters that are dangerous. Blue Eyes is an out to basically all of them. He's an out to Utopia, because he just pops him. He's an out to Neos, because he just pops him. He's an out to Exodia decks, because you can run a monster down the lane, and then during the turn where it would have hit, you can just pop the defensive monster the Exodia player is playing, and then they're free and open for damage. Blue Eyes is really an out to almost any problem. The main issue is that Blue Eyes requires you to understand the game that you're playing. Blue Eyes is a fairly high skill ceiling card because you have to understand which card you need to be popping in the right circumstance and when to use it. The other issue with Blue Eyes is that, actually it's not really an issue. You probably don't but want to be running Double Crusher on him. Crusher is a really good and useful ability to get damage in on people when they're not, you know, ready for it. Because every time that he destroys a monster, he'll inflict 300 damage. But you're definitely going to want to run attack supplement on him, and maybe even run a secretary so that you can get even more attack supplements on him. Because attack supplement is super useful to make sure that Blue Eyes can constantly act as this big, terrifying 3k attack beater coming down the lane. He also, I will say, I think out of all of the monsters in the game, it's him and BLS that are tied for the highest printed stat value, which is pretty neat. There are definitely monsters that can get higher than that. We've mentioned the stupid OTK strat multiple times, but Blue Eyes here, pretty good ace monster. He gets into S tier just because he can really counter most anything, and he is a decent threat on his own. I'm gonna put him at the bottom of S tier just because he's a big like body that hits the field and runs down and punches things, and that's pretty intimidating, but overall, he's not great. He's not, I say not great, that was a, please cut that. Overall, compared to these other guys, he's not a huge threat on his own. He's a threat removal tool while being a decent threat on his own, but he's not gonna immediately win you a game like you'd expect with Blue Eyes. And he also has kind of the issue of not having a deck to be built around. He doesn't really have, like, when you look at a lot of these other cards, you see that and you're like, oh, that's where this card goes. Like, Odd Eyes goes at the head of a Pendulum deck. Fucking Stardust goes at the head of a bunch of level 3 spam Cohesion deck. Like, you know what I mean. Did I say Odd Eyes? I meant Stardust. Odd Eyes goes at the top of a Pendulum deck. Stardust goes at the top of level 3s. Sorry, we're getting towards the end of stream and my brain is slowly turning off. Whereas Blue Eyes is mostly just a good card. So you kind of don't have a deck to run with him. That said, that means you're mostly just going to run good stuff with him, and that's not exactly a bad deck in the game right now. Welcome to the head honcho of the OTK strat that I mentioned before. Dark Magician, let's get you visual on him, has 2 wizardry, and his master skill is every time that you activate a spell card, you inflict 300 damage to all other players. Know that 300 damage is not restored to you. However, that is a very good way to get people lower. Running 1 Dark Magician with 1 or 2 wizardry and his master skill can result in a pretty decently powerful thing. He just needs to sack cards and you're good. I don't know what you're talking about in this instance. I do not know what you are referring to. Dark Magician is sort of disgusting. To quickly kind of summarize it, when you play a card like, where did she go? The Milla the Temporal Magician as your OTK based ace monster. You're going to be playing it for mostly the 2 wizardry and the 1800 stat line. The main problem with that is you have a 3rd skill that's kind of not doing anything. What Dark Magicians does is it burns your entire opponents, all of them. Let's do a second try on that take. What Dark Magicians does is it burns every single one of your opponents to a crisp and murders them. If anyone is low when you're playing Dark Magician, you might just win the game by playing him with the stupid OTK combo. But not only that, he also walks down the lane as a massive threat because he has an absurd stat line with the wizardry thing. So yeah, I'm gonna put Dark Magician as high up in A tier. We're gonna put him in the mid because the main issue with him is that in spite of all of these things that he does, in spite of the fact that he burns enemies on top of the other things that he happens to do, on top of the, in spite of the fact that he has a ridiculous number of stats, he's kind of still weak to all of the same things that the OTK is weak to. He can limit it a bit with things like, he does have access to provoke, so instead of running the master skill, you can run provoke, and then you can kind of screw over the defense position monster that your opponent is inevitably going to throw in front of a card like Dark Magician. But even then, that means you give up on the damage that you would be doing with the skill, and like, he's still vulnerable to spells and traps. He can get his position flipped. He can, there's so many ways to play around it, and it's still such a fragile strategy. But that said, if you're running the strategy, you're running it with Dark Magician at the head. Like, that's the best way to do it. And if you still want to run the strategy and be completely fucking insufferable, run Milla instead. Also, I will mention, I think I just now realized what Bomb was talking about in chat. Yeah, if you run any of the 2 tribute things with him, he's really good, because he can come down for the cost of 1 monster and basically just be a better version of Dark Magician Girl, which is a better version of Milla. There you go. That's Dark Magician. He goes in A tier. Now for our final boy. And it's going to hurt me to say this because I've been running this deck for a good while on stream. You can come and watch me at Wordsmith stream. We have Exodia. I'll be real with you guys. Exodia is a gimmick. He is the gimmickiest gimmick to ever gimmick. The main thing of what he does, the words that come out of my mouth need to sound like words and make sense in order for people to watch the video and appreciate the content. But we're not doing that right now because I'm speaking like a dum-dum. Anyway, Exodia, his master skill in the entire thing that Exodia's deck needs to be built around is at the start of the battle phase, if you draw a normal monster that turn, his count goes up by 1 and he gains 500 attack. At the end of the battle phase, if the count is 5, you come in first place in the duel. You just win. Period. The way this works is he needs to stay alive the entire time, and all of your monsters cannot have any skills. Those are the 2 important things about an Exodia deck. The problem with that is that Exodia is a Guardian monster. The way Guardians work is they guard all 3 of your lanes. If they're in defense position, that means you basically get 1 freebie because people can punch you and punch Exodia, and then they'll kill him and then not swing at you. The problem with this is you want Exodia to survive. The entire point of playing Exodia in this instance is to act as your win condition. You can play Exodia not in an Exodia deck, and just run him as, like, I don't know, an attack support or a defense support boost for all of your monsters, and just kind of have him sit in the back as fodder for an extra material. But even then, like, you're probably not going to run him in that because it's sort of a waste. I don't know. Like, Exodia, as the head of a deck, requires you to play cards that are weaker than every other opponent is playing. Because all of your monsters, I mean, literally every single monster that you run in this deck requires you to have them be normal, which means they cannot have skills, which means that they literally are just going off the printed stat value. Exodia really requires you to have an extensive card pool to pick from. Granted, I say that, but you can really just have all the rares in the game and have all the cards that you need, because most of the SRs and other variable rarities are pretty extraneous when it comes to this, because they can't have their skills. It doesn't matter. It's literally just there for stat line. And plenty of rares have a good stat line. The main issue with Exodia, and I can say this as someone that's been playing an Exodia deck for a while, is that he is a feast or famine deck. You either win with Exodia or you lose with Exodia. The main benefit of Exodia is that people will sometimes just not understand how this game is played, and they just won't read the card. Wow, shocker. I know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players not reading the card. What an idea. But Exodia over here really doesn't, like, do anything if he gets rushed the fuck down. Because what you do when you play Exodia is you declare yourself the archenemy. Yes, I'm using a Magic the Gathering term. Fucking cope. Archenemy in Magic the Gathering is a 1 versus 3 game mode where you, as the archenemy, have increased stats and special cards that allow you to do crazy bullshit. You don't get that with Exodia. If anything, you shoot yourself in the foot to declare yourself the enemy of the entire table. The main benefit and the main difference in this analogy, or metaphor? Simile? I think it's a metaphor, because I don't think I use like or as. It's also kind of an analogy, because whatever, English major things, please forgive me. The main difference here is that your opponents aren't necessarily working together. They're all trying to win. And if your opponents are smart, they'll go and try and sneak a punch onto someone else while they're rushing you down. And that can result in... You want that to happen as an Exodia player, because if they're fighting each other, then they're not fighting you, which means that you're able to get super value out of Exodia just kind of chilling out, and hopefully walling up like a crazy madman. The problem is that most people are stupid, and they will say, okay, well, I guess we're all just punching Exodia right now. And they'll play every single one of their fucking monsters down Exodia's lanes. It doesn't matter. You got 3 opponents you're sitting across. Every single one of those motherfuckers is funneling every single damn monster they control into your lane. Does it matter that they're going to lose because someone has funneled more monsters than them into their lane, and they could easily turn this around by sending one monster down their lane to try and, you know, siphon off some of those life points that they're gaining from the Exodia player? Fuck no. They'll not do that because they're not thinking straight, because they saw an Exodia and their entire brain went, ah! And then decided to start killing. The flip side of this is that sometimes people just don't read, and they let Exodia turtle up for 5 turns and win the game. Hell, you could go watch the VOD of this very stream that we're in right now and watch that happen 3 times, because people just didn't stop me. And that's what I mean by this is a gimmick deck. It's inherently a gimmick on the core mechanics of the game. But in a way, that's kind of a good thing. This card, and Exodia as an ace monster in general, really helps you understand the mechanics of this game and understand how pacing should work. Because you don't have to win through Exodia. You could always just push down someone's lane and fight them. It's probably not going to go well, but honestly, you're more here for stat value than you are for attack or defense in particular, so you might as well just pump your deck full of things with good stats, and that includes things with good attack too, so like, just make use of that and send it down a lane and see what happens. Sometimes you can even win a game even if Exodia gets destroyed, because you've managed to scrounge up enough life points and people have dedicated enough resources to trying to kill you but you've survived long enough that, hey, you actually wound up kind of gaining enough life points to win. And that's awesome. And I kind of really like Exodia for that. But unfortunately, that means I'm not able to really tap into that with this tier list. I'm going to put Exodia above most of this card represents a deck that exists and is trying to mimic it. Here, you know what? We're gonna goof around with the tiers a little bit. Any card that is the representative of a deck that already exists and is just a worse version of that, it's put at the bottom of Gimmick, purely because, like, there's a better option out there. And if you're running these cards, you're probably running the UR instead, because it's not too insane to get one drop of a specific card if you really need it. Sorry, I'm drinking water. No one's redeemed Hydrate in a while, so I'm getting thirsty. A tier. You know, I discussed it a lot. I'm going to put RDA a little lower on A tier, just because that defense position swap can really gimp him. I'm going to put Seven's Road a little higher on A tier. I'm going to put Gaia lower on A tier as well. Gaia is, like, decent for a deck that doesn't work or doesn't really have anything unique about it most of the time, unless you have your ace on the field. If you have your ace on the field, it's popping off. Let's go. But if you don't have your ace on the field, it kind of doesn't do anything, because super speed doesn't do anything if you only have one stack of super speed. Because your monsters still take 2 turns to get there. At most, you dodge a fight in mid. Oh boy, my favorite. But yeah, I think this is we gotta figure out. Actually, you know what? Now that I look at it, I think the only two we're gonna put these in pairs. I think if we were actually like rating these, the S tier, the 2 best ones are Neos and Utopia. Neos and Utopia are both ridiculously good monsters that do a lot for what they are worth. Firewall and Odd Eyes are both monsters that can win the game really quickly for 2 very different reasons. Firewall is a kind of a selfish monster that runs in and punches something immediately. Hi, Cal Projector. Thanks for being new. New twice now. Thank goodness. You're so new. You're so newly new. God bless. Whereas Odd Eyes is something that you want to play an entire board of stuff and then just swing in. I love that my boy Odd Eyes is S tier. Dude, Odd Eyes is good. Like, Odd Eyes is really strong. The only thing that I think is not good about Odd Eyes is the fact that his other skills that he gets aside from his master skill aren't amazing, and they kind of synergize, but like attack supplement is not a wonderful skill. It's really good if you're going wide, which Odd Eyes does want to do, but like it's alright. And Blue Eyes goes on the bottom of meta mostly because he's a counter to any of the ones that you see. Blue Eyes definitely stays in S tier because anything else in S tier dies to Blue Eyes. Except for Odd Eyes. Odd Eyes says fuck you and then dabs because he is the new age dragon as opposed to the boomer Blue Eyes. The Rogue tier, I think BLS is honestly one of the best, like, he doesn't have a gimmick to him. BLS doesn't have, like, a special thing that he does. He's not like a focus deck. He's not like pendulums. He's not like, oh boy, Lynx, I'm gonna try to OTK something. He's just good. Like, he just gets a lot of value out of the skills that he has, and it's disgusting because he can just walk down a lane and be a problem. Seven's Road is, like, he's ascended gimmick. His entire thing is a gimmick, but he has cards that are associated with him that help that gimmick work out. Like, Seven's Road Witch and Seven's Road Apprentice or Sorcerer or whatever it's called. Both of those cards in combination can help get a disgusting amount of value out of Seven's Road Magician. And that in combination with a trap card that triggers off of Inventors is just disgusting, man. Like, you can get so much value off of the cards that support Seven's Road. Dark Magician, as I mentioned, he's here as the rep of the sunny day, happy dreamland where the OTK is super consistent and always goes off. I think he's definitely the best version of the OTK, but I hate the OTK because it's annoying and takes 12 hours to go off, and is also very inconsistent. and he kind of has conflicting interest with his skill setup, where if he had 4 things available, he'd be busted, because he'd be able to get double Wizardry, Intimidate, and the Master Skill. Or not Intimidate, Provoke, and the Master Skill, which would let him literally just walk down lanes and win the game. But he only has the 3, and so you either sacrifice bonus attack points from Wizardry, or sacrifice the burn damage, and that kind of prevents him from reaching his peak potential. Dragius... I'm gonna put Dragius down. I'm gonna put Dragius above Gaia and Stardust and Leviathan Dragon. RDA is pretty strong, honestly. I like RDA. He's just got that Achilles heel of, oops, I've been put in a defense position, dies. Like, he suicides if someone can play some very commonly run cards. So, if they don't play that, or they don't have them ready for him, none of your 3 opponents, he's pretty strong because he fucks over defense position really hard. But that said, he does have that, like, really easily countered aspect to him. Dragius is very much so kind of a win more card. If you're already direct attacking, you're going to be able to do a lot of work with him. You could also essentially buff your cards with either, like, Provoke or Pierce, maybe both, and get a lot of work out of that. But as I said, Dragius kind of doesn't work unless you're actually winning the game currently. That said, he is pretty strong for what he does. A 2,500 stat line for 2 sacrifices is pretty typical, but you could also use one of the double tribute cards to get him out for super cheap. Pretty good. Gaia, as I mentioned earlier, Gaia, super speed is really good. Only 1 stack of super speed is not great. Most of your deck is going to be doing not much because you've given them 1 super speed stack and nothing else, and that doesn't really do anything unless they have 2. There are spells that can help him out, but overall, until Gaia hits the field, your deck's not doing much. But when Gaia does hit the field, it can do a lot. Stardust Dragon, as I mentioned, not amazing. He definitely has a deck built around him. I think with more cards in the future, he's going to get way better, but as it stands right now, he's not great. Same thing with Leviathan Dragon. If we get more cards focused around Focus, I think he's going to be pretty strong. Gimmick tier, to really quickly summarize, Exodia, as I said, king of all gimmicks. Skull Dragon, Man, Archfiend, Lightning, Dude, Boy. Support, kinda. Mostly just here to be a big guy that stands in other people's decks. Flame Wingman. Crush is a cool ability. It's cool that he gives things Crush. Don't know that it's that great, because he needs to kind of survive to give things Crush repeatedly, and Crush, it's mostly just a burn deck with extra steps that can kind of be fragile. Speaking of burn decks aren't great, because it's a very minor gain for the amount of effort that you have to put in compared to a lot of other decks up here. Same thing with Life Point gain, it's just the flip side. Ojama King has no win con, and these two are just Firewall and Stardust with extra steps. They go really well with Firewall and Stardust, I'll mention. Especially Decode Talker. Decode Talker with Firewall actually gives Firewall like 2,300 defense, which can be pretty good. Junk Warrior is really good to get played towards the end of a Stardust Dragon's like play style. You play that on turn 7 and have it walk down a lane and hope it does well. I'm not going to go too deep into see representatives of the gimmick OTK thing. A super speed multi-attacker with the best stat line. Burners, good number. Solid stat line, has good skills. Good for having 2 materials. The poster boy for super speeding. An alternate poster boy for super speeding middle. Best stat line with good skills to complement it. And Link Kuribo is like the blue eyes of bad ace monsters, where Link Kuribo just turns off another monster. That's the tier list in summary. I'm trying to think of a way to end this video. Watch my content. Subscribe to Wordsmith Stream. Other than that, I make other Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. I've been working on a series where I talk about all of the Master Duel archetypes, which is pretty fun. It's been really interesting to go and observe how all of these different archetypes play. I've also got another video out where I talk about every single monster in the game, which is kind of like this one, but this one is looking at them from a different perspective. I'm also going to do a ranking one, and they're all kind of the same video, I'll be real, but they're just different enough that I hope people will click on them. What's the other thing? I've got a tutorial video for Cross Duel coming out. It's going to be a lot more edited than this one. It's going to sound a lot less scuffed because I'm not going to be going, every 2 seconds. So, you know, that should be fun. Anyway, I hope you guys had a fun time, because this was really fun to make. And I'll see you guys later. Go watch my content and subscribe. Bye!